Ryan Blaney out of plain sight just entered the championship picture. Bubba Wallace deserved his penalty, and why Carson Hocevar's behavior is maybe why he did not win at Atlanta last night. Hello, welcome back to the Gay Racing Podcast. Zack back here as always. I'm going alone this episode. I'm not doing a solo show. Alex is on his second week of overtime at his day job. So, first of all, he had to go to bed last night because he had to work today. And that is actually one of the first things I wanted to talk about with NASCAR at Atlanta. And this was, people talked about it at the Nashville race, but this is kind of a problem now. Like, it rained. NASCAR can't control the weather, but it rained last night, right? And my job is seasonal, so I don't really work in the summer. So all these Sunday night races during the summer, they don't bother me because it doesn't directly affect me. But, I am sitting here and I'm like, if I had to work today, I don't really know what I would have done. Like, I would have kind of been a little like, either I missed the race and it's like I wait all week to watch the race, and people compare NASCAR to Sunday Night Football. I'm like, oh yeah, we can do that. And the TV loves it. But some other podcasts made a great point where it's like people are traveling and, the working class people that, especially like NASCAR races, they don't just last like 2 to 3 hours. If it rains, well, now you're looking at like a 7-hour thing, which is exactly what last night was. So like, I don't know, when I was a kid, the Saturday night thing was great. It was the weekend and you wake up on Saturday morning and you're like, NASCAR's a day early this weekend. It's going to be great. It's going to be fun. But the Sunday night thing, it's like you're waiting all weekend just for a NASCAR race. And it's like, the Sunday scaries that you normally get before you go back to work. Nope, but you got to watch a NASCAR race. So it could be good for some people, I guess, in that way. But I don't know. We have another Sunday night race at North Wilkesboro next weekend, 450 laps. I'm a little frustrated, and I feel bad for anyone who is, listening to this that didn't actually get to watch the race last night. I have sympathy. I have sympathy because it's a little ridiculous. And Alex was one of those people. He wasn't going to be able to record today anyways because of work, but he didn't get to watch much. Unfortunately for him, though, his favorite driver, Ryan Blaney, won. Got his second win of the year, the second win for Ford. One of the most dominating wins that we've seen at a drafting style racetrack. Very, very impressive for Blaney. Led 171 of 260 laps. First stage sweep of the season. I saw that on my spreadsheet. He's the first driver to actually win both stages and the race this season. And yeah, it's only Ford's second win of the year, which I'm like, yeah, it makes sense. It's just it's just a little sad because I'm a Ford fan, and they said the stat last night. Ford's last 6 wins are all with Ryan Blaney. And I don't know, that's probably happened with a manufacturer before. It's probably happened with like Jimmy Johnson and Chevrolet, right? I wouldn't even be surprised if it happened with like Chase Elliott when Chevy was really bad, late 2010s or something. But it kind of speaks to Ford. It feels like most weeks they have literally one bullet in the chamber, and it's Ryan Blaney. And let's talk about Ryan Blaney because yes, last night was dominating from him. Clearly the fastest car. He finally gets a win at this reconfigured Atlanta, because this is not the first time he's had the fastest car at Atlanta, but a few things were different. First off, I want to read off this Patreon comment from Dirt. It's about time Blaney got one here in Atlanta after a number of close calls. Is he our best plate racer? He's one of the few to win, Dirt mentions, at all 3 tracks, maybe the only one outside of Joey Logano. I know Tyler Reddick has as well, all 3, Atlanta, Talladega, Daytona. When you ask me who the best super speedway racers are, it's Blaney and Logano. And honestly, it's those two and Keselowski historically, but like currently it's hard to say just because of like this current situation, I guess. But Blaney and Logano are the peak of super speedway racing. And last night was interesting because we saw on stage 1, and we'll talk more about the intricacies of the racing later, but we saw stage 1 and the Penske cars were, head and heels above the rest. All 3 of them. Blaney, Logano, Cindric. Blaney was leading a lot, but Logano and Cindric are really good at hanging with them. And that was also the point of the race where the field was really spread out. Now, I think this could have been for multiple reasons. The warmer temperatures at the start of the race, closer to daytime, as well as we've kind of seen this at Atlanta races before. I feel like stage 1 gets really spread out. because, they don't have practice for Atlanta. They don't run practice. So teams setting up race cars is kind of like a science. And if you don't get to, set your car up for the weekend with the temperature range, there are a lot of guys off. And we saw a lot of cars go a lap, like 2 laps. We saw Noah Gragson go 2 laps down, but that was Noah Gragson. We saw other cars go laps down in that 60 lap first stage, like Ross Chastain, one of them. So there were a lot of guys, I think, that missed the setup, but that was also the most, sensitive the track was with handling, the warmest the track was. Penske, they've traditionally been strong in Atlanta. That's why it's not surprising to see Ryan Blaney get this win. It's taken him a long time to get this one in Atlanta. Joey Logano, he's won like 2 or 3 of these Atlanta races. I think 2. And Logano was up there with Blaney last night and I think he finished second in both, top 4s in both stages for Joey Logano, which is what he needed for the championship picture. More on that later. But Logano and Cindric, interestingly enough, they weren't really at the same level as Blaney after the red flag. And I think you can associate that to the track had more grip. So I think anyone who was off on setup, their issues got kind of erased. And maybe a lot of teams did that on purpose. Maybe they purposely didn't set their car up to be good in stage 1 because they knew weather was going to come. They just set their car up for the colder conditions, the more nighttime conditions. But yeah, once that nighttime came, Blaney still looked fine. He had the strongest car literally from the green flag until the drop of the checkered flag. But Logano and Cindric, like Logano still got a top 10 finish. I think Cindric finished 14th, whatever. They were able to keep up with Blaney. Once they lost their track position, they were not able to get it back through the different pit strategies. Ryan Blaney, though, he could do whatever he wanted. And it was fun to watch. He looked like peak Dale Earnhardt on a super speedway, right? Like it was really fun to watch, but it's really cool to see him finally get this win at New Atlanta. He had a win at the old configuration. Last week, I had journalist Tanner Smith on to talk about, he's from the Pit Box Press, and he talked about how, Blaney has a legitimate shot at the regular season title with, the schedule that remains with the regular season, with all these short tracks and super speedways, including what we just had at Atlanta. And, when he said that, I was like, yeah, wait, I didn't think about that. And it's like, how did we not see this coming? I didn't even pick Blaney for the win this weekend because it was like he never wins at Atlanta, even though he always leads like half the race, right? But we should have seen this coming. And honestly, we kind of talk about the points. We'll talk about the points in more detail later, but Ryan Blaney is now like officially kind of in this picture for the regular season championship, and I think that's good, right? It's not just a 2-man show. This is officially a 3-way battle for the regular season championship. And Blaney's season has been so interesting. I keep a spreadsheet of all the finishes and stage finishes, and there's other stats on here. And I look back at Blaney's finishes. So he got in a wreck at Talladega and had DNF at Talladega. Since Talladega, Ryan Blaney has only been finishing through 6th through 11th. He hasn't been getting any top 5s, but he's been getting top 10s. In fact, I looked at the entire season. Guess who has the most top 10s this season? It's not Denny Hamlin and it's not Tyler Reddick. It's Ryan Blaney. Ryan Blaney is probably, if you use top 10s as your metric, Ryan Blaney has the most top 10s this season. And then you look at his top 5s, he only has 4. He only has 4 top 5s. Guys like Hamlin and Reddick lead the series with 10 top 5s. Blaney only has 4. It is not hit or miss. It's kind of the opposite. They don't hit or miss. They've been chilling in that 7th place range basically all summer and late spring. And that consistency has allowed them to where now they finally go to Atlanta. They finally pop off a win. Damn right they're in this championship picture because they never really, yes, they were out of it, but he was just outside of it. He's been 3rd in points for 2 months, just sitting there. And me and Alex have been talking about the points every single week, and we just go through it, and we're like, oh yeah, Ryan Blaney's still holding strong in 3rd. Nothing to report there because there's been nothing to report with Ryan Blaney. He's just been chilling. But that consistency is scary, and it's something no other team in the series can really accomplish, right? That kind of consistency. Larson had a string of top 5 finishes, but we'll talk about him later. That's ended, right? So we look at the rest of the regular season, I think Blaney is definitely in the conversation to win this regular season championship. We still have Daytona coming up. We have North Wilkesboro next week, which I think he will be very strong. And yes, Denny Hamlin's been good this year too, but it's racing, right? And 65 points Ryan Blaney behind Denny Hamlin. He can make that up. That's not going to be impossible. In fact, I think is very likely with how the schedule shapes up. Definitely it will be a little bit clearer once we get past the Brickyard 400, because that is kind of the weak spot in Ford, Team Penske, and Blaney's game right now. But again, we just went to a bunch of intermediates, and guess what? Ryan Blaney was still scoring off top 10s despite Ford's struggles. So, we talk about how Ford's been struggling. They have a bullet in the chamber with Ryan Blaney. They really do. And it's kind of why it's disappointing that Logano only finished ninth last night. And I'm gonna save to talk about him more, I think, later once we get to the points. I'm going to move on from Penske and Cindric. Cindric kind of was getting pushed around a little bit, but we're going to move on to talk about Bubba Wallace and the finish of the race. And we'll get to Carson Hocevar in a little bit. Wasn't my intro so good? I was mentioning Ryan Blaney, Bubba Wallace, Carson Hocevar. I'm going to get your attention, right? Because I think a lot of you guys are going to disagree with me. And this was really starting the conversation in our Patreon comments. So Patreon member Phil says, what a fantastic race Atlanta provides, but NASCAR blew another call, costing Bubba a ton of points. At least they are consistently inconsistent. What a nightmare, writes Phil. Patreon member Dirt, who we heard from earlier, says Bubba Wallace got screwed. NASCAR doesn't understand the words advance or position. Utterly mangled his race for genuinely no reason when he never passed anyone below the yellow line. This rule needs to die. And there's a lot to dissect here from Dirt. I love this comment. Because what the rule is, you cannot pass under the yellow. You cannot go under the yellow line to advance or improve your position. Now, Patreon member Edward replied to Dirt, because you can reply to people's comments on Patreon. Patreon member Edward replied, I understand the technicalities of the rule. He couldn't have been up there to contend for the win unless he went below the line. He would had to have slam on his brakes to regain some control and stay above the line, which would have only made it a 2-wide finish. He technically didn't advance his position, but he was advancing to contend for a position. I am kind of agreeing with Edward here, as I alluded to in the intro of the episode. I understand why NASCAR gave Bubba this penalty. I view it's very similar to what happened to Justin Haley at Daytona. And I'm not talking about when he won the Cup race. I'm talking about the year before in 2018. He was driving the 24 car for GMS in the O'Reilly series. And they're coming to the line. It was him versus Kyle Larson for the win at Daytona. And he had plenty of room to do this, by the way. He had plenty of room to pass Larson on the inside, and he did. But he gave himself too much room, and he went under the double yellow when he passed Larson, and he got disqualified, and he got his win taken away. That happened to Justin Haley, and it was so stupid because it was like, any human watching that is like, okay, Justin Haley won that race. Yes, he technically broke the rule. He went under the yellow line, but he didn't need it to go under the yellow line to improve his position, right? So why penalize him? Because we can't live in hypotheticals. And I think it applies stronger to this Bubba incident. I think the Justin Haley incident, you can still argue, come on, did you really need to penalize him? He was just giving Larson extra space to pass him. Bubba, we watched last night, and Bubba's trying to make a move on Hocevar, and Hocevar kind of went for like a half block. He went for a block and then kind of changed his mind as soon as he moved the wheel. He was like, let me not block Bubba here. I'm probably going to get wrecked. But Bubba saw the 77 move, and it kind of made Bubba have a reaction to where, Wallace goes and starts turning the car even more to the point where it's like he has way too much lateral momentum. When I say lateral, he's just going to the left way too much, to where his car broke loose, he said after the race. And now he's on the apron. Now he's under the yellow line as he went for his move on Hocevar. Now he's inside of the 77. And it's, apparently, according to the teardown, the rule this used to be a thing in the past, but it doesn't matter if you give your position back anymore. So the fact of the matter is the 23 car did go under the yellow line, and he did that while he went to get position on the 77. And when I say position, I don't mean he passed the 77 car, but it's not just about passing and racing. It's about setting up your pass. And most of the time, to set up your pass, you need to get the crossover with him. You need to get side by side with him. The 23 car got side by side with the 77 by going under the yellow line. Now, I'm not dumb, because as a race fan and as someone who knows, race cars, yes, Bubba did not actually need to go under the yellow line to do that, right? He had plenty of space, but it happened so fast. He probably thought Hocevar was going to bring him all the way down to the yellow line, and he got loose. That's not what happened. He went under the yellow line by accident. Wasn't on purpose, but he lost control of his car, went under the yellow line, and that happened when he went for the pass, went to get side by side. So I get why NASCAR had to penalize him and take his what was it, third place away. I get it. It just sucks, because it's like that Justin Haley situation. It's just, we all know that he didn't actually really. It wouldn't have changed. Like, if he stayed above the yellow line, nothing would have changed. Nothing would have changed about that, right? The yellow line didn't actually gain him an advantage, and I think you could argue that. But as an officiating, if I'm officiating something, I can't live in a hypothetical. Bubba Wallace did not show me that he can make that. He can get side by side with the 77 without going under the yellow line, because he didn't. All we know, that's all he could do in his control. Like, it's stupid. It sounds stupid, but that's just how you have to look at things if you're officiating. You can't live in the hypothetical, right? You can't just assume that Bubba would have been able to stay above the yellow line just because he had space, because he chose not to. The car didn't take that space. He didn't choose anything. He lost control. So I understand NASCAR's side of the argument, but I also understand why Dirt and all of the other Bubba fans listening, I understand why you're pissed off, because it's heartbreaking. It's dumb. That's a dumb way to lose a third place. It's really stupid, especially for Bubba Wallace, because he's had a fine season, except not really, because it's like, I think the expectations for that 23 team are super high, especially when your teammate has 5 wins. And I just talked about how Blaney has been the opposite of hit or miss. Well, Bubba is hit or miss, right? Like, you look, he's either finishing top 10 or he's finishing outside the top 20. He's not having those, he's not having those days where it's like he's just having an off day and he's going to finish in the teens, right? Like what William Byron seems to be doing every week now. No, Bubba's like either contending for top 5s, or it's like something stupid happens and he finishes 29th. And that's why he's 13th in points. And it's like, we know he's not the 13th fastest car. He's got one of the 10 fastest cars, if not one of the 5 fastest cars most Sundays, right? But he's the 23 team, either in some of it's bad luck, and then some of it is just weird things like what happened last night. And it's frustrating. And I hate to sit here and say, they need to get it together. But again, it is kind of not the best look. And Alex and I, when, Bubba's been kind of in the cut line battle for the last month or so. And it's like, man, and I criticized Christopher Bell and Chase Briscoe too, like when they were still kind of near the cut line. And William Byron, I kind of criticized him. Like, you shouldn't be at the cut line, right? Like, if you're a Hendrick or a Gibbs or a 2311 car, being at the cut line just is a little unacceptable, right? At least they're above the cut line still. But for Bubba Wallace, and we're going to the Brickyard soon, where he won last year, and I think there's definitely pressure on Bubba to perform with the Toyota speed. I think if he makes the chase, I think he can have a good run. I think he'll definitely be top 10 in points. But again, I think the 23 team would be a little frustrated that I'm saying, oh yeah, they'll get top 10. No, because they're like, well, no, we need to be in top 5 in points, right? That's what they need to be aiming for, top 5 in points. I think that's what's kind of frustrating for the 23 team, and I hope they can get it together, right? Because there's a lot of storylines going on with the Toyotas, because there was that little incident Bubba had with Ty Gibbs as well, and I'm not going to talk about that too much because I really don't care. It was just kind of Ty Gibbs decided not to cut him a break, and Bubba, after the race on TNT was like, yeah, that's kind of typical with Toyota teammates. And I think that's some of the frustration leaking through that I was just talking about, right? Like, he's one of, it's like him and Christopher Bell, one of like the best Toyota drivers that still haven't won this year. I think that frustration is creeping into both of them. And I talked about that last week with Christopher Bell. It's like, man, it's got to be frustrating. It's got to be frustrating to be one of these Toyotas that does not have a win yet. You know who's not frustrated? Maybe he's the only NASCAR driver who's just damn happy to be there. Carson Hocevar. First of all, that yellow paint scheme is perfect because I'm going to tell you, yes, I watched Atlanta last night. It was a great race, great racing all around, but I feel like my eyes were glued on that 77 car. My eyes were glued on that 77 car the entire night. Because one, Hocevar was running up front all night. When Hocevar, he got in the wall and then like a few laps later, his tire got cut down. It's hard to think that's just a coincidence. I think that was possibly related, but either way, Hocevar had a tire going down and we didn't see him for like, I don't know, like 40 laps, right? There were a bunch of cautions in between that, but we didn't see him for a little bit. That was the only time I feel like I actually looked at another car during the race. I think I was looking at Blaney then because I was like, okay, Blaney's going to win this race. Just let me watch him manage this traffic. But Hocevar, first of all, Hocevar at Atlanta is kind of what makes this track so good. Because, yeah, Spires in their cars, they're fine. Like, they're fast. They got those stolen GGR setups, allegedly, right? Sure, whatever. But Atlanta, and I said this last year at the summer race at Atlanta is a track where it's like, yeah, you need handling and you need your team to be good and you need to be a good driver because you need to actually drive the car at Atlanta. But I feel like Atlanta still, it has that super speedway flair to where you don't need a fast car, if that makes sense. Like, you don't need your car to be fast. You just need your car. You need the driver to be comfortable with the car because Atlanta is still just a really big game of chess in a way because it's still a super speedway race. That's why Carson Hocevar is, Atlanta is one of his best tracks because he's been in the fight for an Atlanta win. Think about when he caused one of the late restart wrecks earlier this year in the spring when he was involved in that 3-wide yellow flag finish in 2025 when Christopher Bell won. Like, Atlanta is one of his best tracks because it fits Carson Hocevar. Carson Hocevar is an artist behind the wheel, and he's just making all of these moves, and it's kind of based on instinct, and he knows how to play this game of chess. And it doesn't matter that his car isn't the best car because Atlanta, Atlanta takes enough driver input, and that's kind of what it's all about because, again, it's like, it's still super speedway racing. It's still kind of an equalizer. It's going to let the best drivers shine, right? It's going to let the drivers that know how to play chess the best and win, right? And that's why Carson Hocevar has been so good at Atlanta. And then there's still situations, though, and I say all that, and then it's like you look at the 12 car, they had a fast car. I say you don't need a fast car. Well, it definitely helped Ryan Blaney win that race last night, but Carson Hocevar gave him a run, man. It gave him a run, especially, Hocevar legitimately did run a clean race. Like, I know he got into the wall a few times, maybe through like a block or two that was a little close, but like that's, he's not the only one in the field doing that, right? Like, there were guys hitting the wall in stage one. Like, let's not act like Carson Hocevar was the only guy to do that all race. I didn't pay attention to the Zane Smith stuff that was going on this week. Honestly, I just didn't engage with it that much. It felt a little silly. I think maybe because it was coming from Zane Smith. I don't know if Zane Smith is the guy to be taking on Hocevar. I think it's like, because I know I said somebody, every time Alex and I talk about Hocevar, it's like someone one day is going to stand up to Hocevar and be like, this, you cannot keep doing this. And here's why you can't keep doing this. I don't know if Zane Smith is going to be the guy to deliver that message. Corey Heim chiming on the Twitter, he's also not the guy. He's not even racing Hocevar every week. It's going to take like a Denny Hamlin, right? It's going to take like a Denny Hamlin or even a Ryan Blaney to step up and be like, boy, you need to get your act together. There is a bit of an issue with that though, right? Drinking my water because I have to talk for 45 minutes straight, but there's a bit of an issue with that. Carson Hocevar is too damn happy. He's too happy. He's always showing those damn teeth. Have you noticed that? Have you ever looked at Carson Hocevar and can't see his teeth? I'm serious. I'm serious. That boy's always smiling. He's always happy. He's always smiling. And I get why. Well, he's in a contract until 2030X or something. Like, I don't even know when his contract expires, right? Like, Spire has him set up. And I think Spire kind of struck gold with this guy. I think they realized that. And I think that's why they locked him up. And Carson Hocevar in return kind of struck gold with Spire because most teams wouldn't pull up with him acting like a kid. But here we are, right? Like, they're singing on the radio, then the team's playing the song back to him. I thought that was, when that happened on TV, I was just like, I cannot take you seriously. And I think Dale and Steve in the booth were like, I cannot take this kid seriously, but I get it. Like, and it's like a way for him to stay focused on the race, because that's something I want to talk about too. Like, Carson Hocevar can do all this, and they talked about him on the pre-race show because of course they did. Of course we're talking about Carson Hocevar. I'm talking about Carson Hocevar. Jamie McMurray said, you know, when people compare him to Dale Earnhardt, well, Dale Earnhardt won how many races, right? And he won races, right? And it's like, yes, Hocevar won a race, Talladega, and I'll give y'all credit. He's competing for wins at Atlanta, you know, another super speedway. And he also competes for wins at Michigan, a diet super speedway. I'm kidding, but you know, yes, Hocevar is 8th in points, and yes, he's had some really strong runs this year. But the fact of the matter is, he only has one career win, and when he does win more, because he will win more, this behavior is definitely, you know, not expected, but it's definitely a little bit more acceptable. But you know, I feel like if Hocevar didn't have his behavior, I think he would have 2 career wins, because I think he would have won last night. Maybe. So I noticed, and I actually noticed this, not just the final lap, but it was most of the third stage. People tried to work with him in stage 1 and stage 2, and even maybe early stage 3. Problem with stage 1 is you couldn't really work with anybody stage 1, because stage 1 looked like Michigan. Stage 1 was just a Michigan race. If you ask me, the field was spread out. It was really hard to pass. You had to set it up. It was really hard to pass, right? When the track didn't have a lot of grip. But you know, I saw people working with Hocevar, like Reddick was working with Hocevar a little bit. So they're guys that kind of trust him. They know he's fast, especially they know he's fast at Atlanta. But then we get to the final lap last night, and who does Christopher Bell decide to push? He's got Ryan Blaney and Carson Hocevar in front of him, and he chooses to push Ryan Blaney. And my mind at first is like, well, of course he's not going to. Like, think about it. If you ask every single driver in the field, if they have Ryan Blaney or Carson Hocevar in front of them, who are they going to push? And it's like, if you're Tyler Reddick, I think Tyler Reddick, if he's in that situation, I think he would choose maybe Carson Hocevar, because Ryan Blaney is closing. And I'm thinking way too deep about this, but you know, Blaney is closing in on Reddick in points. Blaney and Reddick are in direct competition. Bell, if you look at it from that angle, well, Bell is actually in direct competition with Hocevar in points right now. So you could argue that. Maybe that's why. Maybe it's not because of Hocevar's behavior. Maybe it's because, well, I don't think Bell was thinking about this in the moment, but Bell's like, you know, I'm not going to catch Ryan Blaney in points anyways. Let me push him so that Carson Hocevar doesn't get farther away from me in points, right? But then again, just go back and ask every driver in the field, who are they going to push? I feel like most of them are going to push Ryan Blaney in that situation. I damn know Zane Smith is going to push Ryan Blaney, right? Michael McDowell and Daniel Suarez, yeah, I guess they'll push their teammate. Is anyone else going to push Carson Hocevar? Right? Because even I said Reddick would. Would he? Is he really thinking that Ryan Blaney is, the close to him in the championship? And because also you could, throw it back to Blaney has one of the fastest cars, right? You're going to go with the fastest cars, like the Austin Hill effect that we see in O'Reilly. So I just wonder, and there were other times in stage 3 where it's like, Hocevar, he would have help, but it's like a lot of the times when he made a move and it worked, it wasn't because he had help. It was because the little pack was spread out enough for him to clear. So I just wonder, we play that back. And again, I don't like to live in hypotheticals, as I said earlier with the Bubba Wallace thing, but if Hocevar was not a child, does Christopher Bell decide to push him to the win? Something to think about and something to look at. in other super speedway races. And you might be like, well, he won Talladega. Guys helped him there. Baby, it's Talladega. No one's jumping out of line at Talladega. Yeah, you're going to help Hocevar because you don't have a choice. You're gridlocked. So, Talladega doesn't count. Atlanta and Daytona are really the only tracks where this kind of applies, where drivers are really choosing who they work with. And I will say, people talk about how electric this race was. Atlanta, an Atlanta night race for NASCAR is electric, right? It's something that it's something I miss about the Daytona night race July 4th, and it's why it was one of my favorite races combined with the July 4th holiday. It was a night race, and it was super speedway racing. It was electric. Atlanta is kind of like fit that vibe for me for NASCAR, and Hocevar. God, watching those overtimes, because normally when overtime comes, and if Alex was here, he'd be complaining about overtime, but normally when overtime comes in a NASCAR race, I sit there and I'm like, I didn't need overtime, right? But last night, I didn't mind overtime, and maybe because it was a super speedway, but I feel like seeing what would happen between Hocevar and Blaney, them being the front row, it's like the fastest car, and then Carson Hocevar, it's like who's going to win? That was really intriguing, really entertaining, and was really fun to watch, right? So yes, that finish was great. That race was great. I was a little worried during stage one. That it was going to be Diet Michigan, but then the track cooled off when it was nighttime, and we got typical Atlanta racing. The only issue with that is what happens if this race got rained out to a day and we have to race during the day. Are we just going to have a Michigan race? Like, that's something with this Atlanta surface that it's like, I think NASCAR knows that it's something with this Atlanta racing that we kind of have to cherish, because there's no way this lasts forever. We're going to get to a point where like we're not going to be able to have this lightning in a bottle style of racing at Atlanta, because that's what it feels like. I feel like you could take Texas Motor Speedway and try to build it to be like Atlanta, and there's going to be something about the Texas weather that just makes it different and it wouldn't work, right? Like just something, or the angle, they got the angle and the radius of the turns just a little bit off, and it just wouldn't work. Something stupid like that. One more thing on Hocevar. Actually, not really. It's not really important to say. I'm done talking about Carson Hocevar. We've been talking about Carson Hocevar enough this week. We'll probably talk about him next week at North Wilkesboro. It's a short track, so he's probably going to make someone mad, and he's going to end up in the wall. I will say, though, I do want to see him running up front more, because he does make these races more exciting. I think he is part of the reason why Atlanta was really exciting to watch. The only other driver I have to talk about before we get into points, I'll cover the standings and some other shout outs to drivers. Kyle Larson is frustrating right now. It's frustrating to be a fan of his, because I talk about how consistent Ryan Blaney is. Larson had a string of consistency from, I believe it was the Coke 600. Not really. Well, kind of. He finished fifth at the Coke 600. Had a bad Nashville, but then like he was clicking off top fives. He had 4 straight top fives, right? 4 straight top fives. But then yesterday, when he first got involved in the incident, I think it was Tyler Reddick, Ty Gibbs, they kind of checked up off turn 4. Turn 4 was kind of calamity corner, kind of like how it is at Daytona. And Larson was just he was at that point in the checkup to where it's like it was, it just happened too fast in front of him. That sucks. It is what it is. I was really happy to see he did not get stuck on the grass. It didn't seem like he damaged the car. It was a very recoverable night for the 5 team, especially in this era of points racing. He comes in 6 in points. He lost some points last week at Chicago by spinning out on his own. 2-time NASCAR champion, by the way. Just spun out on his own. The problem I have with Kyle Larson last night is he's actually recovering. He's back in, I think, the top 10 or very close to it. Coming back up with like, I don't know, I think this was like under 10 laps to go, doing great, and then he just clears himself off the 11. Yes, the podcast is still playing. I'm just sitting here like I just don't get it. This is not even the first time this has happened at this track this year, because I completely forgot about this. Someone pointed this out on Twitter. Remember in the spring race, it was at the end of stage 2, I believe, and he just cleared himself off SVG because he didn't understand what his spotter was saying. And I understand last night they were racing past 1 a.m. I understand that. Maybe Kyle was just sleepy. Maybe he was sleepy. He was just exhausted. And he just made a really bad misjudgment on a race that, frankly, he was lucky to still be in because he was already involved in an incident. It's just, yes, he's a 2-time NASCAR champion, but man, they were both Mickey Mouse playoff championships. If Kyle Larson wants to get a legitimate points NASCAR championship, it's like, we can't do, and I wouldn't be sitting here, or I probably wouldn't even mentioned it if he didn't just spin out by himself at Chicagoland last week. And people are so frustrated over the Toyota dominance at other tracks. And it's like, if you asked me last week who's the most likely guy to take it to Toyota, it's Kyle Larson. No, you idiot. It's Ryan Blaney. Who's been third in points for the last 2 months? Who doesn't do stupid stuff like that? Ryan Blaney. Like, and it's fun. It's funny because it's like, I think Ford is more likely to win the championship because of Chevrolet. And it's because Kyle Larson and the 5 team they do stuff like this. And Chase Elliott, where was Chase Elliott last night? He finished 13th. It's like, that's kind of, come on, let's finish a little bit better, right? So, second week in a row, it's just silly mistakes that take out that 5 team. And what's really frustrating about it is guess who's earned the most stage points in the entire series this year? It's Kyle Larson. Stage 1 and 2, he's earned the most points of anyone. Ryan Blaney is right behind him, actually. Ty Gibbs in third. But Kyle Larson, he's one of the fastest cars in the first half of the race, right? The majority of the race. But they can't close it out still in 2026. This is the 13th year in the Cup Series for Kyle Larson. Just a little frustrated. Of course, as a fan, but it's also just, I think Kyle Larson is relevant to talk about because he was the most likely candidate to take it to Toyota. But if you ask me today, maybe it's recency bias. I think it's Ryan Blaney, but we still have the lineup of the tracks in the chase. I think it does kind of favor Chevrolet and Kyle Larson. And hey, I think the 5 team is lucky that they have a chase reset, right? Because they can kind of put a lot of this behind them, especially if they're able to somehow recover to like 4th in points. I think that would be very impressive. But it's not going to be easy, of course, especially if they keep doing stuff like this. We are going to North Wilkesboro next week, but we'll talk about North Wilkesboro in a bit. Let's talk about the point standings as I pull up the points graphic. Let me put it split screen so it's all pretty. So Denny Hamlin still has the points lead. In fact, there were no changes in the top 7 in points. And so not much to talk about there besides the fact that Ryan Blaney, because he's just kind of been outside of the he hasn't been in the conversation, but as soon as he wins this race, it's like, okay, now we can actually talk about him being a threat to maybe catching Denny Hamlin, right? And Ty Gibbs is kind of a similar story, We've been saying about Blaney, like, oh yeah, Ryan Blaney just holding it down 3rd in points. Well, guess who's holding it down 4th in points? It's Ty Gibbs, right? Like, he's just holding it down. Chase Elliott, kind of similar story. Kyle Larson, as we just talked about. Chris Buescher, also someone who's just holding it down. Really, really awesome to see guys that have been consistent, able to just kind of hang out in the top 10. I love that. I love that for them. Carson Hocevar, who we talked about a lot tonight, and Christopher Bell, they're 8th and 9th in points. Chase Briscoe got caught up in a wreck, finished 36th after his win at Chicagoland last week, dropped a few spots in points. Not ideal for that 19 team, especially I talked about last week. It's like, that 19 team, they need to mount a charge, right? Because if the 19 team can somehow reach the top 5 in points, that would be a huge deal for their shot at the championship. But Christopher Bell and Chase Briscoe still just hanging out 9th and 10th in points. You're not going to beat your teammate Denny Hamlin if you stay there, right? Daniel Suarez finished 21st last night. He was up there with Hocevar a little bit, but just kind of got shuffled out. He might have gotten involved in an incident, actually. My brain's leaving me, unfortunately. William Byron with that really ugly paint scheme. I don't know why it took till this race to say that his paint schemes are ugly, because it's not just the HP car. William Byron's cars are ugly most weeks. Sorry. See, I'm just saying random stuff because Alex isn't here, but Byron, he's getting kind of feisty with his crew chief on the radio. Thought that was kind of interesting, but a 4th place finish for Byron at Chicagoland last week was really great, and he swept the stages. 16th at Atlanta, who cares? At least he survived, but he's only 82 points above the cut line. Bubba Wallace in 13th. And it's like, where would Bubba be if he had, I guess he lost like, let's say 25 or something points, maybe 30 points. He lost like a little under 30 points last night. He would have been just about where Byron is, because Byron has like a solid, Byron will be above the cut line even if he doesn't start next week, right? It's like, but Bubba's not at that point. And I hope that doesn't cost Bubba. Austin Cindric honestly had a really good night. Considering he's Austin Cindric. I'm about to say something different for his teammate Logano, but Austin Cindric got points in both stages, top fives in both stages. Finishing 14th may be a little disappointing, especially we've seen Cindric contend for the win in Atlanta before, but they just didn't have it. Or they also, again, Cindric was kind of getting bullied around a little bit. SVG, stuff like this is going to be why he makes the chase. Stuff like this is why he will make the chase, because he just, and I kind of alluded to it last week, I think, because SVG has been strong in Atlanta before. He got a top 10 here in the spring, 6th. He split Reddick and somebody else. Like, he made a really good move. I don't know if it was a good move because Reddick talked to him after the race, but he made an aggressive move. And I thought, I love seeing that from SVG because it shows how he's gotten so comfortable at oval racing, especially the super speedways, because it wasn't too long ago to where they put SVG in a super speedway race and he would just ride around in the back in the Wendy's car, right? When he did like some starts for Colleague. And Eric Jones holds on to the cut line, 5th place for him. He was up there, actually. Eric Jones was up there a lot, because we did see a lot of the Toyotas up there. Most of them were, of course, GGR and 2311, but Eric Jones had a really good night. He even got a few points in one of the stages. Joey Logano, 17th in points, 8 points back. And some people look at this and they're like, man, great night for Joey Logano. And it was a fine night for Joey Logano. I just feel like it was a little bit of a missed opportunity because, we talk about Ryan Blaney finally got his first win at this new Atlanta track. Well, Joey Logano has been the one that has been beating Ryan Blaney, beating Brad Keselowski even, right? Because Keselowski was really close at winning a lot of these super speedway Atlanta races as well, but Joey Logano was always the one that would deny them. And as I said earlier, to replying to one of our Patreon comments, Joey Logano is one of the best super speedway racers. For him to come out of Atlanta only finishing 9th, he wasn't really in the conversation to win the race. He wasn't up there with Blaney. I think if Blaney wasn't up there fighting for the win, I wouldn't be saying this. But it's the fact that it's like there's a clear tier above Logano, and that's Ryan Blaney, and Logano is a tier below him. And it's not just here at Atlanta, of course. I'm just talking, it's an every week thing. And this is just exacerbating it, because it's like if Joey Logano was going to win a race this season, it would have been at Atlanta. Alex disagrees. More on that later. But seriously though, I think if Joey Logano is going to win a race this season, I feel like it's the 2 Atlanta races. Maybe I guess you could throw in Talladega or Daytona, sure. Which we shouldn't be saying about a 3-time champion, but we are. And technically the 22 team, they can win literally anywhere. They could win on the moon as long as Paul Wolf can set the strategy and Joey can execute it, because it's the 22 team. They've won championships like that. But outside the cut line, there's not too much I want to talk about. Brad Keselowski had kind of a miserable race, kind of a missed opportunity for him as well. Like this could have been a race where he not even win, but like get a lot of points. But he hit the wall early in stage 1, and I think that kind of set him behind. Ross Chastain gained 2 spots in the points. That's the most anyone gained in the whole series. Gained 2 spots. AJ Allmendinger had a miserable night. I think it's time to put that to bed. And then everyone kind of behind 20th, 21st. Not really worth to talk about in my opinion. Well, you could talk about them, but in terms of making the chase, I think we have 6 races left. I think it's very clear cut that the conversation, Ross Chastain on up, and Michael McDowell and AJ Allmendinger, they're right there, but I don't think they had the potential. I think Ross Chastain and the 1 team have the potential, and I knew they were going to be strong here at Atlanta. Ross finished 11th, but I think it just kind of depends how a lot of these upcoming short tracks go for them. I think Ross could mount a comeback. I don't think it's likely. If I had to call it right now, I don't think Ross is going to make the chase, but it is possible, right? Ryan Preece kind of being outside the bubble, that's going to be kind of hard for him to kind of go above. It is kind of down to SVG. Like, I think SVG is probably the most likely guy to fall out of the chase. The question is who is the most likely guy to kind of come above? And as Tanner talked about on the show last week, it's probably Joey Logano, especially with the short tracks coming up. North Wilkesboro next week. He's won an all-star race at North Wilkesboro. We haven't even done that much racing at North Wilkesboro. He probably might still have that advantage, but we'll just have to see, because I don't know, this 22 team is not the same 22 team that they've been in the past, even 2 years ago, right? So, but yeah, that's really all that I have to talk about on points. All right, it's time for Hot Topics, and today's Hot Topics are talking about just the other two NASCAR series, but unfortunately it's not for good reasons. So the O'Reilly series was at Atlanta Saturday night during when the Cup race should have been Saturday night, and the truck race was at Lime Rock. So what makes Atlanta so good in the Cup Series, and I kind of alluded to it earlier, is the fact that it's kind of an equalizer and it lets the drivers show their skill. It makes Atlanta really fun to watch in the Cup Series with the Cup cars. Unfortunately, it makes the O'Reilly race at Atlanta either really boring or it's just a disaster of a race. And that's a little unfair because there was good racing Saturday night. The racing is still good, especially when you get a good group of guys up there, but man, that O'Reilly race looked like an iRacing lobby. Like, and some of it was just like Jake Finch was in the 9 car. And I know, guys like Jake Finch, they need to get experience. I get it. Is Atlanta the place to put him in to get experience on speedways? Is it? Like, I don't know, because in his incident was he got put in like a really bad aero spot and he just spun around. He just didn't know how to handle the situation. Denny Hamlin, who, by the way, perfect in the booth, loved Denny in the booth on the CW. Denny Hamlin kind of called it out right as it was happening. He couldn't call it out fast enough. So it's like guys like that in the race. And then he brought out the next caution because he went back on track, but then he like spun around or wrecked again. There are other cars coming back on track, leaking oil, bring out the caution. It's just like, what are we doing? Like, this is a professional racing series. Yes, you're not the Cup Series, but damn it. They look like amateurs sometimes. And especially it's like when you have 4 red flags for incidents. And it's like, I don't know what you're supposed to do to solve that, because it's like a disease. It's like, I don't know how you're supposed to get rid of it. Besides change the entire financial and culture system of NASCAR, right? Because we have all these doctors in these race cars because they have money. It's a little ridiculous. And Justin Allgaier wins by doing absolutely nothing because he was the last competent driver up at the front. And I'm not saying that to be disrespectful, but it's like Brennan Poole. Brennan Poole got the lead, but he didn't know what to do with it. And then he ended up wrecking himself because he went for like a block, or he didn't go. He went for a block, but then he wasn't aware. It didn't look like he was aware he was 3 wide and didn't get enough space. Nick Sanchez was involved in the wreck. Carson Quapple kind of like shoved, just kind of pushed through, I believe it was Sanchez, to cause one of those wrecks. It just looks like amateur hour up there, right? Because it's not the Cup guys, and it's not, they don't know exactly where to place their car, right? Like we saw Blaney and Bubba kind of get in a disagreement about a very close block that Bubba kind of somewhat didn't pull off last night, but it was really close. It's like these O'Reilly guys are just running each other over. And it's like, I don't know if we really need to see these O'Reilly cars race at Atlanta as much as we do the Cup guys. Because Atlanta's the best track for the Cup cars. It's just, I don't think you can say the same with the O'Reilly cars. It's just kind of a disaster. It's the worst of super speedway racing, having 4 red flags, the race taking like 2, I think CW, they cut like an hour or extra into like the next TV window. Like, I'm not a fan of what we saw Saturday night, nor am I necessarily, I'm kind of a fan of what we saw Saturday afternoon in the truck race. So first of all, I love the trucks at Lime Rock. The 2 lower series, anytime the truck or O'Reilly have a road course race, I love it because it's an opportunity for road course ringers, because we don't really see road course ringers in the Cup Series anymore because, well, I don't know, most teams are full-time with a full-time driver and they're fighting for the championship and stuff. And, there's a lot of money when putting a Cup car together, right, for a Cup start. It's a lot. But Louis Foster, who's an IndyCar driver, and he's not like a big IndyCar driver by any means. He's just one of the guys in IndyCar. But him making a start in the truck race at Lime Rock is cool for the IndyCar fans, and it's cool for the NASCAR fans, and it's just cool for racing fans. It's anytime we get to see a driver do a crossover, I love it. And trucks at Lime Rock, O'Reilly at San Diego, O'Reilly or trucks at any road course or street course makes stuff like that happen, because road course international racers are road course racers, and they'll go do a NASCAR if they're at a road course. We also saw Thomas and Nunziata, who won the ARCA race. Like, he's kind of not really a road, he's still coming up in ARCA and stuff, but he's also kind of a road course ringer. He doesn't run the full truck schedule. Seeing him in the truck race and kind of being competitive was really fun. And honestly, I just sit here and I think the three most prestigious, and when I say prestigious, I just mean races I care about. The three truck races I actually cared about to watch this year were St. Pete, San Diego, and Lime Rock. The three road course races. And it was because they actually had interesting drivers in it. They had really cool drivers in it. It kind of gave the truck series a little bit of a weird identity. Not like the old guy identity that people went back like with the Ron Hornaday era, but like this like, it's kind of like a mini little sports car race where it's just like, yeah, you got your series regulars and stuff, but then you have these guys from other series coming to race because they had nothing to do that weekend. I love that, especially at Lime Rock, right? Mike Joy was back on the broadcast and he did a few history segments, talked about the track, talked about the history. I love that. It makes you appreciate Lime Rock. It makes you appreciate the trucks being at Lime Rock. And normally I'm against, I wouldn't say against, but normally I don't care for truck or O'Reilly standalone weekends, because I think, especially at most weekends now, the Cup Series, they don't do a lot of practice. They really need O'Reilly and trucks to really make the weekend feel full and feel like an event. I feel like San Diego, for example. San Diego would not have felt as big if we did not have races on Friday and Saturday. But when the trucks do something like Lime Rock or St. Pete, where it's a standalone weekend, but it makes sense, I like it. Because also, I just said I don't think O'Reilly needs to race at Atlanta, or at least a second time. Well, the trucks definitely did not need to race at Atlanta a second time, because they couldn't even keep it clean at Lime Rock, of all places. Could you imagine if the truck series, because first of all, they've been doing this in Charlotte. That messy Charlotte race on the morning of the Sunday of Memorial Day weekend, the truck series hasn't been messy lately. That's why I haven't really cared to watch it, except, the road course races. So I watched Lime Rock, and I said Justin Allgaier won by doing absolutely nothing. Well, Grant Enfinger won the truck race at the truck race at Lime Rock by doing absolutely nothing. I think that was his first or second career top 10 at a road course. It's just same thing I just said with the O'Reilly race. They look like amateurs, right? And yes, Lime Rock Park is known. It's got some, it's very historical, but modern day, it's more of a club circuit. IMSA doesn't really go there with their big series, right? But it's more of a club circuit. It looked like you asked a bunch of people from some country club or some car club to go race in NASCAR. That's what it looked like. Multiple red flags again. And that's the reason I don't watch truck races. And it's just sad because, again, I think trucks at Lime Rock have a lot going for it. But is Louis Foster going to come back? Is he, after experiencing that, is he going to want to come back to NASCAR? Because that's something that kind of happened a few weeks ago. Not really the Kevin Magnussen thing, because I think he's kind of the exception. But I feel like most people, when they get into NASCAR and they get race like that, I don't think that it's going to make them want to come back. I don't know if it's a good look for our series. I think it's up for debate. I guess it makes NASCAR unique. I guess that's cool. I mentioned Mike Joy a little bit earlier. I loved Mike Joy on the Lime Rock broadcast because, and this is really random, but it's hot topics, so I'm going to mention it. I would stand to see Mike Joy in that role more. And I've said before, I don't think Mike Joy needs to be in the booth. I think he's kind of not the problem, but he's one of the problems with the Fox booth and the Fox production in general, because it's, I still have the points up. Oops. I've had the points up during that entire time. Oops. Oh, well, sorry, video people, but it's just me talking anyways. Mike Joy makes you really appreciate the history of auto racing, not just NASCAR, not even just, sports car racing, just American auto racing. He's an expert on it. He really is an expert on it. And you can tell that anytime he talks about Lime Rock. And I'm sure he can't just do this at every single track, but I don't know, NASCAR, especially NASCAR. Like, NASCAR has a lot of historical tracks. Mike's been around the sport for, I don't even know how long, a long damn time. And I would love to see Mike kind of get into a more permanent historian type role, kind of like a Rutledge Wood, but it's like if Rutledge Wood was an historian at the racetrack and not himself, right? Or whatever Mamba Smith is doing. I guess Mamba Smith is the new Rutledge Wood, I guess. That's what TNT is using him for. But I would love to see Mike kind of in those positions again. It makes me really really happy, especially when I think people wanted him to call the truck race, Mike Joy to call the truck race. Not when you have Eric Brennan, though. Eric Brennan's doing a great job. He's even been hosting the Door Bumper Clear podcast to fill in for some of their usual hosts. And he's been doing a great job on that. I just love the sound of his voice. He's been doing a really good job. And again, the truck race at Lime Rock had a lot going for it. Great direction for the truck series to go into. With, if you have Eric Brennan in the booth, even Todd Bodine, I think does a great job in the booth. And he kind of represents what the truck series used to be, right? But then you still have like the Michael Waltrips that are in the booth. Michael Waltrip. And the camera work, they apparently there were a lot of bad angles. Like we couldn't, I know Ty Majeski ran off the track and was in the tire barriers, and we could see his rear bumper, but we couldn't really see anything else. So that was really frustrating. And I just think it's a little disappointing that the racing product, because it's not good racing, because it's dumb. Like they're just wrecking. Caden Honeycutt and Lane Riggs are the fastest guys, and they can't even barely make it to the finish. Honeycutt had a comeback drive, but it's like when Grant Enfinger is able to pull off the win. It's just like, really? And no disrespect to Grant Enfinger, he's again Truck Series veteran, but he's not known as the road course guy. With all these fast road course guys here, it's just everyone else took themselves out. It felt like, so just a little disappointing. So let's get into fantasy. That's all I have to talk about for Hot Topics. Thank you again so much to our Patreon members, by the way, for helping me get through this episode. I had some other people to kind of bounce off of from the comments. The $5 a month Patreon members get bonus episodes early, and $2 a month can join our discussion in our episodes, along with the $5 a month Patreon members. So before we sign off, let's do fantasy real quick. Of course, Alex isn't here, but he did text me his picks in our proper order. So we are tied in NASCAR. Alex picked Austin Hill at Atlanta for the storybook, the kind of Kyle Busch feel-good story. Austin Hill finished 31st after getting involved in an incident. Guess who I picked? Bubba Wallace. I picked Bubba Wallace. Luckily, it didn't make a difference because Bubba Wallace finished 29th ahead of Austin Hill, and Bubba Wallace wouldn't have won the race anyway, so I didn't lose any points here. I gained a point, in fact, and I'm now tied with Alex. You're 16-16, and Alex got to pick first since he finished worst at Atlanta, and he picked Joey Logano. So remember I said, Joey Logano's only opportunity to win this year is probably at the Super Speedways or Atlanta. Well, Alex thinks Joey Logano is really going to turn it around at North Wilkesboro, and honestly, I get it, because Joey's been pretty fast at short tracks, right? Penske normally is. He's won the All-Star race at North Wilkesboro, so fair enough. But guess what? You know what's better than Joey Logano? Ryan Blaney. Because that's the thing, too. It's like if Joey Logano's going to have a good night, Ryan Blaney's probably going to be the one actually winning the race, because Ryan Blaney is going to be having the better night. So I'm picking Ryan Blaney, and that is kind of how it is, right? Like if Joey Logano and Team Penske, if they hit it at a racetrack, the 12 team's probably 5 seconds clear in the lead, right? That's just kind of where the 22 and the 12 teams stand right now. But we've seen Joey Logano beat Ryan Blaney plenty of times before, so we'll just have to see what happens on Sunday night at midnight probably, because it's a 450 lap race and they'll probably wreck a lot. IndyCar might be race of the weekend because they're going to Nashville. They're having an oval race. I think North Wilkesboro is cool, but man, IndyCar at Nashville. And wait a damn minute, are they going to conflict? IndyCar at Nashville start time, because I think it's a Sunday night race. I know it's after the World Cup final. Oh no, we're good. 5:30. So IndyCar races at 5:30, and I think TNT. You might miss stage one, but it will be worth it. I promise, because IndyCar at Nashville will be electric. It will be fun. I don't know if it'll be a full night race. I guess if it's starting at 5:30, but it will be following the World Cup final on Fox. So I guess everyone in the world's going to be watching, right? Or everyone in the United States, sure. But if they do, they'll see a damn good race. Alex is 14 points in the lead. I am 12 points, 2 points behind. I'm going to pick Joseph Newgarden. I get to pick first. And Alex is going to pick Pato O'Ward, who just came off the win at Mid-Ohio. So I think Joseph's the favorite. He showed at Gateway, the broken ankle, foot, whatever. So many injuries this year with Bell and Newgarden, but Newgarden showed a Gateway. The injury's not slowing him down at these ovals. So I think Newgarden's just going to rack up another one, of course. Watch Rasmussen, of course. Watch Pato O'Ward, of course. Who also was fast at Gateway. Not really the Ganassis. Malukas, I think this could be Malukas' opportunity this season to finally get that first win of his career. But you'll just have to tune in and see. So we'll talk more about those two races next week on the Gay Racing Podcast. Please like and subscribe on YouTube. Leave 5 stars on podcast platforms. Follow us on all the socials at Gay Racing Pod, at New Gaden, and at Dreamy Zack Racing. And I will see you guys next week to talk about Nashville and North Wilkesboro. I might have a guest with me. It might be another solo show. I have not decided yet. But either way, I will see you guys next time. Bye, and thanks for listening.